There we go, folks. Welcome to this edition of the MFHL podcast for Season 2, Episode 3 on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca. This episode brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, Goaltenders, as well as Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. We've been having a bit of difficulties with OBS in the past few days in terms of getting stuff in for content and stuff like that. So there's going to be no B-roll in today's episode, meaning no stills, no images. It's just going to be strictly me talking about MFHL, games coming up, as well as previewing opening weekend and week coming up next week, and some other stuff on this Friday afternoon. But as for the only guest in this week's episode, it's Eugene Kaminsky, head coach of the Winnipeg Ice. Eugene, a theme in talking to him is very focused on moving that train forward in that Winnipeg Ice dressing room, on ice, off the ice, all together. More so on ice from a coaching staff perspective, of course. But talking to him, he's really fired up about this year's Winnipeg Ice squad in terms of the players returning from last year that kind of took things into their own hands during their preseason games out at Portage La Prairie for the Central Plains Capitals Showcase. And yeah, we also talk about plenty more on this edition of Episode 3, Season 2 of the MFHL podcast on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca, presented by Terrico, McCann Fasteners and Tools, Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. Eugene Kaminsky coming up next. Well, it's one of my favorite coaches to talk to, Eugene Kaminsky, joining this edition of the MFHL podcast. Eugene, the last few times I've talked to you on podcasts, it's always been pretty positive in terms of the results. This Winnipeg Ice team comes into this 2024-2025 MFHL season as back-to-back defending champs. I guess let's just turn the page back to last year. Another special year. Ended off with disappointment, of course, against Regina, but to go back to back, just reminiscing about how special that feeling truly was.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things you want to think about what a great accomplishment you have, but at the same time you want to temper that a little bit, knowing that you got another job moving forward to this year. But for the girls that have been on this program for the past 2 and past 3 years, that last game for sure, the last championship for sure, is something very memorable. And I think we were able to establish something very unique. I know in those last two playoff runs we've had in the league, we didn't lose a single playoff game, and that in itself is pretty astonishing for ourselves as a program. And so we're excited about that. And yeah, but that was last year, and now it's time to move forward.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, moving forward is one of the ways this Winnipeg Ice team is continued to dominate. Moving forward year in, year out, the returning players getting better, the new additions coming in and making a huge impact. But Westman, they I guess won back-to-back championships technically, since there wasn't a playoffs that was played in 2019, 2020. They made it to three straight finals, I guess, in the past three seasons, but this Winnipeg Ice team did the same and won back-to-back. There hasn't been back-to-back champions since, I guess technically Westman in a way, but since Pembina Valley, really. So to be in that type of conversation, I guess as a coach, how much pride do you take in that?
I think you have to take a lot of pride in it. I think we're very fortunate to have been able to assemble some really quality individuals and the families that go along with that to have that success. Like, the success is not based on just myself or the coaching staff that just happens to be here. It's been the players able to buy into it, what we're trying to tell them, the parents that are willing to support us and support their daughters in this process throughout the year, because it can be a very trying process, and there's a lot of sacrifices that players have to make. So it is important that we get support from everybody. Um, so, and we've been able from day one set a culture on our program that what we're looking for, and we've never really focused on early success throughout our years. Any season you probably take a look at it, we probably have a lot of slow starts moving forward throughout the years, and then as we get going, we start to build up our momentum going throughout the year, and we're looking to continue that trend moving forward this year, and we hope we can build right to the end and hopefully have another successful year.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, this team lost some significant talent from last year's championship team, notably Stephanie Jacob on the back end, and players like Brienne Compte, and then Laura Melissa, of course, senior goaltender. That's just to name a few, some of the big ones there. But this year's roster, there's some good returning players. Izzy Mana is going to be wearing the C this season. Talk about what you've
Yep.
seen so far through this preseason process in terms of those returning players from last season, how they've improved this year so far.
Well, I think there's different things, and as you touched on, there's a lot of people that had significant roles that played for us last year, and there's so many. You mentioned a few, and there's a few many more that were key parts of the success of our team. And moving this year with the returning players, we've already noticed a positive approach to it because there is a tendency because we only really have three grade 12s on our team. We have Izzy Mann, Avery Lazarenko, and Bailey Grunwald. So in essence, we don't have a lot of that strong veteran leadership going forward. But what I've noticed is, especially for Izzy's taken on a huge step in her leadership program. I know she was there last year, never wore a letter, but this year she jumped in and we asked her to be captain and she accepted it and she's really taken well to it. And Avery Lazarenko is another person that has really stepped up and she's been uh, visible and vocal around the team and she leads in her own special way. So those players for sure are going to have a key impact. And then we have our returning players. And like you said, they were here last year and last year's they were rookies and this year's they have to um, be a key part of the success of this team because that's going to be a big chunk of our team moving forward.
You know, it's interesting because, of course, this season hasn't been played yet, but the first year this team wins a championship, there were a lot of times where there were dominant wins. Last year, there were a lot of games where this team found a way to win a lot of close games. This year, you won't have the same type of players to count on. Like you mentioned, you're looking for players to step up, but how excited are you to take on, I guess, this new challenge of, yes, having experience back, but having a bit of a younger team who is looking to, make their mark?
Well, and exactly. I think you talking about players wanting to make their mark. I think we now have um, the opportunities of Winnipeg Ice players know that we've had success in the past, and so they want to be part of that, and they want to contribute in every way they can. The returning players know what it takes to have that success. If last year they were not necessarily what they may consider their own personal key part, and which obviously they were, they know this year what they have to do to step forward to be a contributor to this team. And the new players coming in, they're definitely looking at this and say, okay, well, how do I continue the trend moving forward? And we've looked at the first few skates we've had, the first few games we've had, and we're really excited about this team moving forward. We've talked about it already that we feel, as a team, we're already ahead of where we were last year at this time. There's still a few things we have to go, and there's no doubt about you're losing a lot of skill with the likes of Jacobs and our decor that we're losing with Moffat and Compt and Farmer. And then, like you said, Laura Melissa leaving in net. Like those are significant holes for us. And so although we might be looking good right now, we need to make sure that we have that same sort of makeup moving forward as we get past Christmas.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I mean, it's been proven that this team has been able to reload and win. We've done it in the past 2 years. Haven't lost a playoff series during that time. It went 9-0 last year in the playoffs, Eugene. I think that is something that I think is pretty underrated in itself, to win 9 straight games to win a championship, a special group at that. But before we get into, I want to ask about, of course, a certain player in Bailey Grunwald next up. But in terms of having that target on your back, you talked about it last year how teams were gunning for this Winnipeg Elks team. I feel like that doubles, even triples, or even more this season with knowing you have won back-to-back championships in this league. Does that excite this team even more this season in that aspect?
Yeah, well, even last year we talked about that, about after winning the championship in that first year, and also if you just that year we also went 9-0 in the playoffs. So um we have a target on our back. We talk about that all the time, that player teams want to beat us. And it was very evident even in this preseason when we played our local teams, like we played Eastman, and even though it was an exhibition game, our very first exhibition game, and their first game or one of their first games, they were going hard on us. And anytime they had a good rush on us, you can hear the cheers. And so teams want to beat us, and we experienced that last year, which was an awesome learning lesson for our players because we lost some games that maybe we shouldn't have lost.
Right.
But we talk about, you know, nobody hands out any banners in October or November. That's not what we're worried about right now. And so the girls learned that it's not necessarily that one win on that one Saturday afternoon. It's the process and what we need to do to become better. So when we get into the playoffs, we know what it takes to be competitive. We know what it takes to win and put ourselves in a position to win. Because anytime you go into the playoffs, games are going to be tight. And as we experienced last year, like there's one goal games that easily could have gone either way. And so what does it take to make sure you win that game? And it's just the little things. And so we learned that from last year, and we're going to use that, and hopefully the returning players recognize that moving forward. And we're going to emphasize that again this year, that it's a process. It's not about, the big goals early on. It's about how we create good habits moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that's what sets the teams that win championships apart from the rest, right? Like you said, it's those little details. And I think that, it's been proven not only in hockey, but in other team sports like football, right? Basketball, sports like that. Maybe even baseball. I don't know. Don't watch too much of that up until the playoffs. 162 games or something like that. I don't know. Watching
Yeah.
season worth of that. Like, are you kidding me? But for this team so far, he played in the Central Plains Capitals Showcase this past weekend in Portage. I'm sure you had a few games before that, but take me through what the preseason's been like so far, getting to get a feel for this group in game action.
Well, the Central Plains Showcase was our first games that we played. So we played the first games that weekend. It was our only 4 games we've had. Um, had a few skates beforehand to get the girls ready. We try to pace ourselves moving forward. But like I said, it was really good to see without a lot of coaching, if you will. And it was sort of more of a case. We gave them some basic concepts that we were hoping for, but we're really stressing compete effort and just general effort in all and quickness to pucks. And they showed that. And so they played just basically on their own. And what was great to see actually, and you talked about that, you asked the question earlier about how some players were needing to step up and take on that role. Well, without much instruction about power plays or anything, because we haven't done any of that yet. Many of the players on the bench, they were talking to each other about what they needed to do, where they wanted to be, how they wanted to set up. And I really enjoyed seeing that because now they're thinking the game and they're learning the game. And so as coaches, all we have to do is sort of fine tune that for them. So that past weekend, it was really impressive to see that the girls were taking ownership, and we just have to again fine tune it every now and then, and every now and then motivate them and encourage them to make sure that they're being successful.
Yeah, and I think that must be it's a coach's dream. I think you would agree with that. It is hearing your players, like you said, think the game, and you just sit back and watch and see the benefits of it, see what you may need to improve it, and knowing you have that group of players that'll listen and buy in, potentially you'd have to think so, is uh pretty special for sure to know that Winnipeg, this ice team, has that again this season. But I want to ask about Bailey Grunwald. You've spoken so much about the past from our conversations, how your goaltenders really go out of their way to put in the work off ice or on their own on ice hours at the ice rink or wherever it may be. um, what's it been like so far getting to see, I guess, the progress that Bailey Grunwald has maybe made through the off season up until the game she's played so far?
Well, the one thing you can always say about Bailey, she's always going to be working. I know she goes to gets extra instruction from the ice lab. She's always looking to become better. And I think she recognizes that, she's the veteran on the team. We have a rookie goalie coming in with Gina Plett. Um, so Bailey has the experience and she puts that effort in. And I would never challenge anybody on that there's any goalie that doesn't work as hard as Bailey does. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like she had a couple of games this weekend. She had a great game against Weyburn, and kept us in the game. It was a 2-2 tie, and but it was the first period that our players came out very sleepy and she kept us in for that first period, and then we were able to get up to a 2-1 lead, and they scored unfortunately a late one, but again, not on Bailey's watch, but it was really just one of those situations. So we're comfortable with our goaltending tandem right now, and we're very excited moving forward that this should be a strong season for both of them.
Yeah, for Gina Plett coming in to this team, of course, one of a few new additions, to say the least, on this year's
Hmm.
excuse me, ice squad. But opening up the season against Crosstown Rattles, the Winnipeg Avros, at the Hockey for All Center next Wednesday. We'll be covering that game. Very excited to be a part of the season opener, the ice home opener, and to see this rivalry in action, because I don't believe we actually broadcasted a ice versus Avros game. But this team's looking very strong coming into the year, Eugene. A team that Ashley Van Egelen is motivated to guide this team to a championship with this group. You guys or girls, this group is looked at as the team that everyone wants to beat. How is this coaching staff going to, I guess, handle the preparation heading into a game that's going to be filled with a lot of emotions?
Well, I think one of the things it is a season opener for us. It's our first game. And like I said, I don't put too much stock into our first few games that we play because there's things that we want to work on, things that we want to be able to instruct upon them and what we need to get from them. But there's no doubt that first game against the Winnipeg Arrows is going to be a huge test. I got a chance to watch them this weekend in Portage Prairie playing the Central Plains Showcase. They are really good. They are set. They got high-end scorers. They got top-end goaltenders. Their defense is very strong. This is going to be a team that's going to be very difficult to beat, and we know that. Like I said, I wish I'd be playing them a little bit later on in the season, but the first test is going to be this Wednesday. And if anything, it's going to give our girls a chance to say, okay, so if you want to compete in this league and if you want to play, this is the measuring stick. And so for us, the Avros are the measuring stick. We're going to be the ones that are going to have to keep up with them. And I think for a lot of our young players coming in and even our returnees, it'll always be a competitive game. I know the girls on a lot of returning players on the Winnipeg Avros team. If I was them, I'd be licking my chops to be able to go off this Winnipeg Ice team with the wagon they have right now because they some of them have taken some unfortunate losses against us and games they deserve to win and we somehow squeaked out a win out of it. So I think they're looking for some retribution along the way. So it's going to be a tough game, that very first one for us for sure. But I think for, like I said, for many of us, it's going to be a good eye-opening experience for them.
Yeah, and I mean, COVID-19 robbed us of maybe one of the greatest final series of all time back in 2019, 2020, which we'll never know the outcome of because that's hard to believe it 5 years ago now, or 4 years ago now. It's
Yeah,
gonna
that's a long
fly.
time.
Time flies, Eugene. And I guess for this team, this season, heading in, gotta ask you, what's went into the decision of only playing 4 games instead of playing a lot more compared to other teams? Has it been, maybe emphasizing more on focusing on practices, or is it something else?
Uh, our philosophy is really just about tempering our playing time with the players, and especially September and August can be September for sure is a busy time for a lot of these girls. Some of them are moving into high schools for the first time. Some are dealing with that. Some are getting their grade 12 year. They're worrying about university. There's other sports that they're involved with, whether it's volleyball or soccer, whatever that might be going on. So it's a busy time for them. So um, I don't want to put too much stress on them and their families early on in the season to say, hey, let's get a lot of exhibition games because at this point, like I said, these early games aren't going to mean much in regards to anything. And we look at a lot of these earlier league games, even just as glorified exhibition games in many regards. We've always taken that approach. Like, yeah, you want to win, you want to have those 2 points, and it might make a difference whether you're third or fourth at the end of the year. But if we're playing well in January, then and if you want to have a conversation, then I'll have a really good idea where we're at. But that's what we're focusing on. So we don't want to put too much of a load of them early on because we know that load, especially in October. Now we're going to be going into October. That's going to be a really busy month for them. And so we want to make sure that they're as fresh as they can be and we'll be ready when, hopefully playoffs roll around and give them the breaks when they need. But yeah, I don't feel there's any value in the part to the exhibition games outside of we just want to see that. And I know people are itching to watch them play, but at the same point, it's just give it some time. There's going to be lots of hockey coming. Trust me.
Oh yeah,
So,
and I think it's just a different approach, right? This team has, I think earned this type of, opportunity to do this too, right? Like any team can, but this team, I think heading into this season, you learning from different years, different seasons, you operate in the way this team is this year in terms of the schedule before the season. I think it's totally warranted. Last season ended with a loss in the Hockey for All Center against the Regina Rebels. There's a number of returning players that experienced that loss. Last question for you, getting to have a full off season to compartmentalize it. What have you taken away from that whole experience?
uh, yeah, there's a lot in the last 2 seasons. We've lost to the Regina team, and the first time we did that, it was sort of very heartbreaking because I think we legitimately should have won both those games. Last year, again, I think game one, when I look at that, it was again an opportunity to win, and we missed that opportunity. And then game two, we were just outplayed. I think that Zablocki, she just took over and became a dominant player in that game, and we didn't really have an answer for her. But again, to me, it's done. Like that was last year, and we got 17 players right now and some of them have no clue what we talk about when we talk about last year. We don't like dwelling on the past with this team because this is a brand new team, and we're going to focus on it. And as coaches, we know what the process is. We know we need to get there. And, um, if you're going to tell me that for the next 5 years, we're going to be Manitoba champions, but never get a chance to go to the SO Cup, I'll take that. I'll take that. I think any team would. Sure, we want to get there. That's our ultimate goal. And we talked about that is to get the SO Cup, and we know what we need to do to be prepared to get there. But there's no way we're going to get a chance to get there unless we win our province. So we're focusing on winning Manitoba again. And if we are fortunate enough to be in the finals, hopefully we get a chance to do that.
Well, for sure. And moving forward, I think that's the theme to start off the year for this Winnipeg Ice team. And looking forward to what this team is going to bring to a MFHL 2024-2025 regular season that should be filled with a lot of surprises, a lot of parity, and a lot of competitiveness.
Mhm.
Thanks for joining me on this extended interview with yourself, since you are the only guest for this episode. So I thought I'd give you a bit more time than some of the other guests we've had on the show. Excited to see you and the rest of the Winnipeg Ice team down at the Hockey for All Center next Wednesday for opening night and the home opener of this 2024-2025 season. Until then, you take care and enjoy yourself. And thanks for coming on once again.
Thank you again, Graham, and looking forward to seeing you next week and in person. And yeah, looking forward to another great season. And again, thank you for everything you're doing to help out with the league.
Eugene Kaminsky, head coach of the Winnipeg Ice, joining this edition of the MFHL podcast for season 2, episode 3, on an episode where he is the only guest. Next week, hoping to have more players on the show, as it's going to be a huge week in the MFHL, starting with Wednesday's game, which will open up their 2024-2025 season. It will be, as mentioned, the Winnipeg Ice taking on the Winnipeg Avros. 7:15 will be puck drop at Scotiabank Hockey for All Center, formerly the Iceplex. But yeah, for us at G Show Productions, we'll be covering that game. We're going to have our pregame show for you at 7:05 on G Show Productions here on YouTube, as well as on our website. You can find us and get to YouTube there on gshow.ca. But Friday, there's going to be not one, not two, but 3 games. It'll be the first ever regular season game in Brandon Weeking's U18 female AAA hockey history, as they'll be in Shoal Lake to take on the Yellowhead Chiefs at 7:30 p.m. The first game of Friday night will be the Central Plains Capitals coming into Winnipeg, as Ferdy Nelson will be coaching against a good friend of his in Ashley Van Aglen in his return to the U18 AAA coaching level. That game will be at 7:15 p.m. at Seven Oaks Arena, as the Avros will be playing their second game of the year at that point. And for the Pembina Valley Hawks, they'll be hosting the Westwind Wildcats at Morden at 8 p.m. As for Saturday, a game that we'll be covering will be at 5:30 p.m. The Eastman selects their season opener and home opener against the Central Plains Capitals. The Caps playing on a back-to-back, both road games. Coverage for us will start at 5:20 p.m. on that Saturday night. And as for other games, it's the Winnipeg Avers taking on the Pembina Valley Hawks in Morden at 5 p.m. and the Interlake Lightning taking on the Yellowhead Chiefs at 7:30 p.m. in Shoal Lake. So back-to-back home games for Yellowhead to start off the season. As for Sunday, the Winnipeg Ice will be back in action in yet another game in Shoal Lake for Yellowhead at 2:30 p.m. 2 games starting before that half hour earlier will be the Interlake Lightning versus the Westwind Wildcats, the Eastman Selects versus the Pembina Valley Hawks. Lightning Wildcats will be in Hartney, Manitoba at Hartney Arena, and Selects Hawks will be in Morden. For all details, be sure to visit MFHLU18AAA.com for the schedule, the scores, the stats, and everything to do with the league. And also be sure to stay up to date here on the MFHL podcast, as we'll be relaying that information in different ways as this season rolls around. Can't wait for 2 weeks from now, where in episode 5 we'll have highlights to show you. That'll be exciting, since we'll start to finally cover games. Our broadcast season started last night at St. Vital, as we were there to cover the season opener of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League's 2024-2025 regular season. But I'm going to take another transition coming up next. I'm going to talk about this Winnipeg Ice team some more, as well as what their chances may be of potentially going for another championship, or shall I say winning a third straight championship this season. That's coming up next on G Show Productions MFHL podcast, brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools, Carico, Goaltenders, and Ken Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. More to come after this transition. Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's been fun so far on this edition of the MFHL podcast for season 2, episode 3. Had a chance to talk to Eugene Kaminsky, who has guided this ice team to a lot of winning in the past 2 seasons. 18 straight playoff wins, back-to-back championships, just falling short, of course, in both West Regional series, losing both best 2 out of 3s, 2-0. But hey, Regina, they are an unbelievable team, and they are the defending national champions coming into this year, as they won the SO Cup last year. Strikers Zablocki will be back, who, for my money, I'd say she's the best player in the province at the level right now. I don't think that is really an unpopular opinion, probably either, because of what she's been able to do. She was unreal to watch last season. But yeah, for this Winnipeg Ice team, of course, lost some good veteran talent from last year. There's one rookie in particular who went to the other Winnipeg team in the Winnipeg Avros, in Callie Lavalley, who should be in for a pretty good rookie season. But they were able to get Kate Cairns, who AP'd with them last year. She, I think, could have a good impact on this Winnipeg Ice team, like Eugene said, that, of course, has returning talent, but not many players that are going to be graduating out of the program. Like he mentioned, Bailey Grunwald, Isabella Mann, who's going to wear the C this season, and Avery Lazarenko. This team, I think, is set to be among the top teams in the league for the next 2 seasons again. But in terms of them winning a third straight championship, I think it's just one of those things where you gotta wait and see what happens, right? Because not only do you not have certain game breakers that you had last season, when you're talking about a Stephanie Jacob, a Brianne Compte, a Laura Melissa, at least on paper, like Bailey Grunwald should be really solid, and Bailey Grunwald could turn out to very well be that goaltender that could steal games for the Winnipeg Ice this year and have a similar impact that Melissa did. But she's going to get the tougher teams this season. Last season, not as much compared to Melissa, or we'll fact check that actually right away, because I know that these Winnipeg teams, they like to split their goaltenders, the games that they play. Yeah, so I mean, Bailey played 14 games, Laura played 17, but for the most part, when, the Ice did play the stronger teams, Melissa would probably be in net. Grunwald, taking a look at her season, yeah, I mean, playing against teams like the Pembina Valley Hawks, the Interlake Lightning, the Central Plains Capitals. She had some good wins, of course, against the Winnipeg Avros, the Western Wildcats. So Bailey Grunwald, she proved she could do it. Can she prove that she can run away with the starting job by playoffs and give confidence into Eugene Kaminsky in terms of rolling with her as the starter? I think the chances are high of that. I think that Bailey, she's in for a good season, and by what Eugene was saying, like, the harder you work, I think the better the results will be, and Bailey, by the sounds of it, has been putting in that work. And yeah, I mean, you're not going to have, like I said, the Jacobs and the Comptes, but you're going to look to other players like an Isabella Mann to step up, wearing, a C, but I don't think that's going to affect how she plays at all. I think that she's going to wear that C with great pride and be a great leader on this Winnipeg Ice team. But yeah, players like Chloe Nicholas are still there, right? When you talk about players like Cassie Carvalho, who got better and better as her rookie season went along. Avery Lazarenko looking to have a huge season in her senior year. And you look at players back like a Chloe Delacouille, right? And having Aaliyah Texiera back, who was so steady on D. So that paired with good rookies coming in, because the talent from Hall of Winnipeg is so strong in hockey, right? It's the strongest area that teams can pick from, and these two Winnipeg teams get a chance to bring in great talent, and that's what this Ice team did again this season. Very excited to be calling games for them this year. And another player that I think is super underrated are players like Ali Chablik, who played a lot of games on that first line last year, centering Stephanie Jacob and Chloe Nicholas and whoever else would be on that top line for a while. And she also proved that she could be effective in other parts of the lineup. Italia Jones, too, right? Who was pretty reliable out there and is going into another season with this team. So, yeah, they're going to put it into action for the first time in the regular season coming up on Wednesday in the MFHL against a Winnipeg Avros team who Eugene gave a lot of credit to, and that's the sign of a coach who respects his opponents, because, yeah, this Winnipeg Avros team does deserve a lot of respect. They're led by the likes of Rio Pierre this season. Evie West is going to be wearing the C on the back end. Two goaltenders that you could argue they have the best tandem in the league this season, with Madeline Sylvester and Adriana Almeida. And just, yeah, some really good depth on this team. Adding players from teams like the Eastman Selects, getting a shot to get a player like Adeline Nolgren this season in their draft and making the team. And yeah, it's going to be fun to see this rivalry coming up next week on Wednesday. G-Show Productions will be there for opening night, like I said, and I cannot wait for it. But yeah, that'll do it for this edition of the MFHL podcast. We're going to have a really fun week next week, as we'll be able to recap that season opener and much more coming up next Friday. But before we let you go, we're going to take one more transition, and I'll send you off with some final words on Episode 3, Season 2 of the MFHL podcast here on G-Show Productions. You've made it to the end of another edition of the MFHL podcast for Season 2, Episode 3, brought to you by McKen Fasteners and Tools, Terraco, Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. We were showing you their websites throughout this episode. I'm sure you can just type it into Google, their brand names, and you'll be able to find them. But yeah, check out their websites. And if you have a chance, be sure to check out Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. Pretty cool place. Pretty cool indeed. A lot of great selection. Some of the stuff a bit pricey, but there's some good deals in there. But you know why it is pricey in some ways, because it's more of those big ticket items, right? And some more novelty items that they have. They have CFL cards, they have World Junior cards, and yeah, a lot of their stuff really, really high quality. Some signed jerseys as well. So yeah, be sure to check them out in Winnipeg and in their store locations. That is only one in Winnipeg on Miltsteagall Drive. But yeah, as for us over here at G-Show Productions, we will be back next Friday for an all-new edition of the MFHL podcast. We'll also be live, of course, for the season opener on Wednesday at the Hockey for All Center in Winnipeg, Manitoba, for Ice versus Avros. Special thanks to Eugene Kaminsky for joining this edition of the podcast as well, and a special thanks to you, the viewer, for tuning in to this one and tuning in on this Friday or whenever you may be watching this edition of the show. If you want to stay up to date with when this podcast comes out, check us out on social media, and as well as check us out on our website as well, gshow.ca, as we'll be posting the details for the next episode coming up and upcoming episodes. We're starting to post our game schedules too. And if you hit subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll be notified when episodes like this and our MFHL content comes out. Super excited for the upcoming week, everybody. It's going to be so much fun. We're busy tonight. We'll be in Seven Oaks Sportsplex to cover the season opener for both the Raiders Junior Hockey Club and the Stonewall Jets. We're also broadcasting on Sunday. And then I believe we're going to be broadcasting 5 days straight next week. It's going to be a jam-packed week coming up. I hope you're there with us along for the ride. Enjoy the great weekend coming up. Stay safe out there. Enjoy this beautiful weather. It's absolutely beautiful outside once again on this Friday. And before you know it, we're going to be having MFHL hockey played soon. So it's the calm before the storm right now, and the storm should be pretty darn entertaining. We'll see you next week, everybody, on episode 4 of season 2 here on gshow.ca on gshow Productions. Take care. Happy Friday.